friends and crafters, and welcome back. My name is Deepa from DeeZinesByD, and today I have a Scrappy Tales card or pop-up card to share with you. So today I'm going to be making the A7 pop-up lantern. So these are absolutely gorgeous. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can jazz these up and personalize them and make them work for you and what your occasion is. So let's go ahead and look at all the products that I'm going to be using today. So these are some beautiful embellishments from Scrappy Tales, which I may be using, mostly the blue. I have the A7 pop-up sets. One is for the roof and one is for the actual base. Then I've got the Nativity Scene Dies. So these are what's going to fit into the window of the lantern. And then I've also got the candlelight poinsettias. This is an older set, but I'm going to use it to kind of decorate my lantern. Okay, so first things first, here is the lantern base. What you're going to want to do is cut two of those out. I've done that out of white cardstock. And then here's the set with the actual roof or the top of the lantern. You want to cut one of these out. It's a large piece, but it folds nicely into a four-sided triangular prism to go on top. Now for the nativity scene dies, I've cut out all of these pieces ahead of time. I'm using rose gold Sizzix opulent metallic brushed cardstock, and I've cut all of those frames out. Now there's 3 frames with images, and then one of them we're gonna cut out an image, and then we're gonna use the center frame to cut out the actual frame, and we'll use the sentiment in there. So for the actual base of the lantern, I didn't want to keep it plain white. So I've got this wood stamp or wood grain stamp from Altenew. There's also a wood grain die from Scrappy Tales that you could probably use for this. I don't actually have that, so that's why I went ahead to use the stamp. And for this one, I'm just kind of inking it up with some Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat emboss it with some Ranger Silver Pearl embossing powder because I just want the white portion of the lantern to have a bit of texture and not just be completely plain. Now, remember, we're going to have to create panels for this one because we are using the nativity scene windows. So those are actually, they're different. They have a triangular top, whereas most of the other frames are all rectangular, just like these. So, this is not 100% needed, but I did want the pattern to be throughout the entire bottom of the lantern. And this is going to cover mainly those little curvy portions on the top of the lantern to just make sure everything's kind of cohesive. So in short, you really don't have to do that step, but I felt I wanted to make everything go together. Now I'm also taking a blank piece of white cardstock and I'm inking it up with some Snow Flurries Maker Forte white pigment ink. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I had a bit of trouble with my Versamark ink. The pad wasn't juicy enough, which I didn't really figure out until later on. So I used the pigment ink as like a fail safe to make sure that, there was at least a pattern on the white paper, on the white cardstock. And then I'm also going to go ahead and heat emboss it with the same silver pearl embossing powder. So in the end, I just juiced up my ink pad like crazy, and then the stamping came out perfectly and the embossing was phenomenal. Okay, so I'm using my guillotine cutter to cut down the rectangles that are going to go around the edges of the lantern. So I'm cutting it to 2 5/16 by 4.5 inches. And as you can see, that should cover the lantern portion. Now, once we've done this, we have to cut the little triangular topped frame out of these as well so that our image can sit on top and show through the lantern. So all I've done here is I've lined up that rectangular embossed piece behind that main frame of the lantern so I can get an idea of the window. I fit the die in the middle, and then I've added washi tape on the inside of the die so that it's not kind of taping over the edge, so I can remove that frame. And so now I can easily cut out the triangular window, and all I have to do is kind of match up the rectangular piece with the next one and stick the die in the frame and tape it in the same manner, and then I can remove the already cut frame from there and cut the other rectangle. So that's how I did all of the pieces to make sure that they were all in the same spot. So now we have to cut some vellum. So the vellum is what's going to hold our frame and kind of allow the light to shine through. So I'm cutting 4 of these again. They're going to go behind the window there, and they're about 4 inches by 2 inches. They're a little bit bigger so that I can glue it to the frame. So now that I've got the main pieces of the base all cut out, let's go ahead and try and assemble it. So the first thing you have to do is fold the 2 base pieces of the lantern. So there are score marks that the die does cut out. So I'm scoring the main long one and then also the one for the tab on both pieces. And then I'm going to add some 1/8 of an inch very strong double-sided adhesive to hold these together. Now I'm only going to tape one side to begin with. I'll leave the other piece of tape on there without removing the backing for later. And to basically put these together, all you really have to do is just line up the little lines. There's also a score line at the top before that little nice curvy piece at the top. So you can line that line up with the other piece, and then again, the frames on the bottom. So you can see that lantern is going to come together nicely and everything's going to fit nice and straight. So once I've got that frame done, I'm going to move on to the actual rectangles that are going to keep in place the nativity scene frames. So I'm adding my vellum to the back with some liquid adhesive. And I find that the liquid adhesive for this really comes in handy because you can still kind of move things around and play with it a bit until the glue sets. Now for the frames, I added the glue at the back and then I placed the frame right on top. They fit ever so perfectly. You can see where it lines up. And then I just put an acrylic block on top just to weigh it down a bit to make sure that everything's sticking while it dries. And I basically went ahead and continued with this process for all of the 4 different panels. Now for the 4th panel, remember we only have the frame because we cut out the duplicate image. And I've cut out the sentiment Silent Night, Holy Night from the same rose gold brushed metallic cardstock. Now the S and the Night, Holy Night, all is cut out in one piece. And then you have the ILENT, that's a separate piece. So it all kind of just comes together pretty nicely. Now, once that's done, I can go ahead and assemble the roof or the top of the lantern. So you've got all of these score lines here. And the first score that you're going to want to make is the shortest line there, okay, along the width in the center. That one's going to be a valley fold. So you're going to fold the metallic sides or the nice side up against each other. And then all of the other folds are all mountain folds, okay? And then you're basically pulling in that valley fold so that the rest of it can form the pyramid. And once you've kind of figured out how this all comes together, then you can just add some tape to one or both sides of those 4 triangles where we did the valley fold, and those 2 will come together and adhere together. I only added adhesive on one side, but it's really strong, and because this is a metallic cardstock, it's going to stick very well. Actually, it doesn't stick very well, but because it's strong adhesive, it works. Okay, so let's put together the rest of the bottom half. Now, I did attach the other side so that I get the full square base. You could put together the next portion of this and then do that. It might make it a bit easier, but I really don't think it makes a big difference. So I just put it together anyways. I wanted to just make sure the entire thing was working well before I added all the frames. So now I've added double-sided adhesive to the 2 little flaps on that roof, and you can just line it up. There's like that line, that scored line on the top of that base where you can see that you have to place that roof piece. Once you've got it all lined up, you can remove the other adhesive and stick it all down, and you can see that it folds nice and flat. And then to get it to stand up, you kind of just have to stick the corner of the other end inside the frame and it stands nicely. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add all of those nativity scene frames. So again, I'm using liquid adhesive here. As I mentioned, it's just easier to place this down and move it around and get it in the spot where you need it. Now, I did make these so that there is a little bit of space on the left and right sides, and that was just so that they would fold properly when you open and close it. If you make it exactly the size of this frame, then you might have a bit of problem with that when you open and close, and I just didn't want to run into those problems, which is also why I did want to heat emboss the background, like the main frame of this, to make sure that that pattern is kind of continued throughout the whole thing. And then you can see once you've got the main base of this put together, the rest of it comes together nicely. I actually thought this would take a really long time, but it took less time than I thought, and if you're doing a bunch of these at once, it really is like a whole day of crafting, and it's just a lot of fun to do. Now, for the little toppers, I would recommend, if you are going to send this in the mail and fold it flat, do only attach like the bottom portion of it to the roof, okay? What I did is I actually attached the top of the loop with some glue and then realized, oh crap, I can't fold it flat because it's gonna kind of twist a bit and not be overlapping exactly when it's folded flat. So don't do that, just attach the part to the roof and that's it. So now you can see as it's open, those two loops are together. So anyways, moving on, let's go ahead and get our decorations ready to kind of just add a little bit of extra oomph to this lantern and kind of have it match my color scheme. So the reason why I picked the colors I did for this lantern is I wanted it to match the decor of my house. So I'm not actually sending this in the mail, but I figured I'd like to fold it flat when I do put it away so that it stays nice and, doesn't get damaged. So I'm heat embossing all of those poinsettias and a few of the hollies that come in that set with some white embossing powder on vellum. And now I'm using the coordinating dies to cut all of these out. So you can see that they cut out and they look so pretty on their own. You probably could stick them on like this, but I did want to add color to it. Now, before we get to that, these are all of the other pieces that I die cut out. I've got the bow, which I cut from some blue and white glitter cardstock. I've got some other branches and foliage pieces that I've cut from the Christmas bloom set from Spellbinders, just because I don't have a matching set from Scrappy Tales to go with this. And then there's also the candles. So let's go ahead and assemble all of these. You can see that I just kind of added a little glue behind that candle holder and then stuck the little candlestick inside. And then now I'm just adding the melted wax and the flame piece to this candle. Now for the second candle, I don't want it to be the same height. I want it to have a varied height. So I'm going to cut a portion of the bottom off before I stick it into that candlestick holder, right? And then I'll just add the little pieces onto the top there, and that's what that looks like. And then I've got the little bows. So I cut two of each, one from each color, and I'm just going to layer them on top of each other with some glue. So once these bows are done and I've got all my little extra die cut pieces that I'm going to add to embellish or jazz up this lantern with, I'm going to use some Copics. I've got the colors here, GOO BG23, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add color to the back of these vellum poinsettias. So I'm adding it to the back because this is the easiest way to do it because it's an alcohol marker. It's going to set. It's not going to smudge or anything. You can't do this with a water-based marker. You have to use your alcohol markers. And on the front, you don't really want to do that because you don't want to cover up the nice white embossing powder that you added to these vellum pieces. So I'm just basically turning it over every once in a while to make sure that I am coloring on just the poinsettia portion of the vellum. There are leaves here as well, but I'm just going to leave those white. I don't really want to color those in. So I'll just color this like I would color the normal flower. And then I'll just blend out the colors to make sure that it shows through. So you're going to want to choose colors. You can see I added a darker color here, BG09, to make sure that it does show through the vellum because the original two colors were very light. Now, if you've made it this far with me in this video, kudos to you. I don't know if you can notice. I really notice it, but I have this cold and I think I have the flu. I don't even know. It's been a couple weeks now and my voice is just really suffering. So I'm sorry about my voice kind of going in and out, kind of crackling, not sounding quite there. I'm drinking coffee here trying to get through this. So I'm just going to keep coloring all of these poinsettias in the same manner. I'm going to use the same colors for the actual hollies as well because otherwise they'd just be plain white and I didn't want them to be kind of lost in the lantern. And as I mentioned, this is the color scheme of my Christmas tree this year. My children always choose the colors. We chose turquoise and rose gold. So I'm hoping this goes really well. I'm going to sit this on the knee wall in front of my front door so that it can kind of be displayed and it's so pretty. I really would recommend buying all of the different frames that can go inside this lantern. And the other good thing about this lantern is it's so versatile. I'm pretty sure that there's probably going to be an add-on in the future that you can use for other occasions. So now that we've got all of those poinsettias nice and colored, we've got all of our little pieces to adorn this beautiful lantern, I'm going to go ahead and start putting all of this together. So I'm adding the little candlelight candlesticks in the bottom left of the what would be the front of my lantern. So I considered the Silent Night, Holy Night as the sentiment, and this is the front of my lantern. So I'm adding the candlesticks there, and then around the corners, I'll kind of jazz it up and just add some of the poinsettias and those glitter branches and things like that. Now, you're probably wondering, now, what if I'm going to send this as a card? It just has a sentiment. Where do I write my sentiment? Now, you can fit this, as I've mentioned, and as Sabrina has mentioned, you can fit this into an A7 size envelope. So it's a larger 5-inch by 7-inch envelope. And you could put another like small, maybe a 3-bar card in there, and just write your sentiment in there so that they can still kind of display the lantern. If you really wanted to, you could create a little tag and attach it to the top with some string so that it's not going to create more height, and it'll still fit into the envelope. And then you could kind of write your greeting on there. And then if your recipient wants to display it, they could always just cut off the little tag and keep that and show the lantern. And yeah, there's tons of different ways you could do this. You could put the little note card in the center of the lantern as kind of like a surprise. For me, as I mentioned, I'm not using it to send through the mail, but I did want to show you how it folds flat. So that's why I did kind of detach the loop on the top. So you can see here as I have it flat that it is offset. So if you're making it for your house and you're not going to fold it flat, go ahead and attach those loops. It also helps the lantern stand straight when you're just putting it on display. So as you can see, these vellum poinsettias, actually they look really nice on the white. So once I add it, the white embossing really pops out through that blue or that turquoise, and the turquoise really shows through the white. So this is why the white base was very important. If I use a colored base, the turquoise color wouldn't stand out as much. And in that case, I would recommend stamping these out on colored cardstock or coloring them in rather than putting them on vellum. So now for my final poinsettia, I'm actually layering it on top of the front one. And I think that layered look with the vellum looks really nice. I think that I might try that for a card. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the little bows as well on top of those little holders. The bows, I'm just adding with some foam squares. You can see a lot of it I added with foam squares. When this stuff is not really going through the mail and it's on display, I go crazy with the foam. I love the dimension. It's going to be 3D anyways, so the foam is just really fun to work with. So now you can see that I've added the little stars in the nativity scene frames. Keep those aside because they are cut separately. And adding them, it really just adds that extra little bit to your nativity scenes. Now we've also got this embellishment mix. So I've got a couple here. I'm only really going to use the blue and white one there. So these embellishments are from Scrappy Tales. There are a whole bunch of them available on the site, so go ahead and take a look. This mix has a mix of gems that have like an iridescent shine on it. I've added those to the centers of the poinsettias and to the center of the bows. And then I've also got some here that have a pearl satin finish to it, and those are going to go onto the branches as berries. So that's another thing to note with the embellishments. It's a mix. It's a complete mix of different types of embellishments. So if you get one bag, you get a few different types of embellishments in it. So that is my lantern nativity scene Christmas card or pop-up decor piece for today. I hope that you've been inspired to make something similar yourself. Go ahead and check out the products that are available on the Scrappy Tales website. There is a link in the description below. It is an affiliate link, so I do get a little bit of a commission at no extra cost to you. I'd appreciate if you do use that link if you were inspired by me. Everything I've used is linked in my blog in the description, which is linked in the description below. And I hope that you all have a great day. Thanks again for tuning in, crafters. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.